Good afternoon, everybody. Before we get started on my review for A Cure for Wellness, I'm just going to let everybody know that I had no choice but to divide the review into two parts because that is the only fucking way I can get through this film. So just to give you warning ahead of time, part 2 is going to be my full of spoilers review. I am leaving nothing behind so that way you don't have to watch this. But part 1 is basically my cautionary, hey, you probably shouldn't watch this if these certain things affect you. You can call it a trigger warning. I'm just letting you know this movie will fuck you up if you're not prepared. So the other thing is, y'all know me in previous videos outside of like Saw when we knew what we were getting into. I typically don't try to give too much light onto movies where there are certain ick factors. But my thing was, I have vague recollection in 2017 when this movie came out about it being a big deal. I thought it was nominated for Best Picture at one point, but I guess not. When I went back and looked, but the fact that this was such a big deal at the time really bothers me, and that's why I'm going through and going ahead and giving the reviews. Sounds weird, but in my head it makes sense. And just to let you know, I'm spoiling the ending on this one just because there are a group that really shouldn't watch that last little bit, but probably still wants to know how it ends. So that's what's happening. So without further ado. So A Cure for Wellness has a lot of icky elements, just blatantly icky. There were scenes, there were depictions of things I really wish I would have known about before I got into this, and it has stayed with me since yesterday, and that doesn't happen a lot. So I'm letting you know now, this movie isn't for everybody. If you are a survivor of SA or the Big R, skip the ending, skip at least the last 30 minutes, maybe the last 45. And this is where the ending spoiler is, so that you don't have to see it. They kill the doctor daddy thing. They push him in the pool with the eels. He gets eaten by the eels, and then they get away, and the sanatorium's on fire. The end. Yeah, blatant depiction, by the way. Child marriage, that's referenced. Kind of sort of depicted. That's kind of a weird way to explain. Torture is depending on your definition. What I saw was very... I don't want to call it Saw-esque, but it was kind of Saw-esque. That's a no. My definition is if you are being held down and forced to do something against your will. If you have a blatant fear of the dentist or anything involving teeth, that's a no-go. I added drowning because there is a ton of water involved. And an actual depiction of drowning. And frankly, if you're uncomfortable with nudity in general, that's a kind of a smaller scale thing, but if you're trying to watch it with somebody, I'm just letting you know ahead of time. So yeah, definitely skip this if this is you. So this is part 2 in the actual review for A Cure of Wellness where I am spoiling everything. So I only started watching this last night because I'm scrolling through and I saw that it was directed by Gore Verbinski. If you don't know that name, that's the guy who directed the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Which Pirates of the Caribbean is fantastic, so you would think he would be consistently good. But I stand corrected because this was a 2.5 hour mindfuck. So essentially what happens is this hedge fund manager is in trouble with his company because his company is going down and they're going to throw him under the bus and he's going to go to prison for a long time. Unless he can find the CEO of his company to fly back to New York from somewhere in the Swiss Alps at like the sanatorium retreat thing to form this merger. So he goes over there and like the little retreat thing kind of worships the water that runs in the ground. They believe that that is the cure for eternal life and whatever the fuck the sickness is. But a lot of weird shit starts happening and he's getting sucked in and he can't get to his boss. And then all the weird shit is revealed, which we will get to. So if you're wondering if this sounds familiar, it is. This movie is basically Shutter Island, but instead of a detective trying to solve a murder on an island, it is a hedge fund manager / stockbroker accidentally deep diving into an MLM scheme while trying to rescue his boss. To be perfectly honest, the beginning is boring as shit. So the first, hour is boring as shit. Like, he goes over there, he's trying to get to his boss, but they won't let him see him, and they won't let him go back. But then when he's going back to the airport or to the town or whatever, they're in a car accident, and he wakes up and he's in the sanatorium recouping because he has a broken leg. Oh yeah, did I mention it's at Hogwarts? Because it's at Hogwarts. Well, while he's there, he's learning about what the sanatorium used to be. Apparently, it was the castle to this baron who had this thing about a pure bloodline, and the only person he could find to carry his child to keep the bloodline pure was his sister. And in order for them to marry, because, incest, they denounced the church, to which the townspeople got mad. They lit her on fire, and I think they burned him alive as well, or they hung him. I don't remember. But keep that in mind because it's going to be important. So the whole thing was the Baron brought his sister wife thing up here because supposedly she was sick and he was trying to find a cure while all his peasants kept going missing. And then farmers would find them later looking like mummies and they had no idea why. But again, just to remind you, this whole sanatorium place worships water. They believe that water has the healing abilities and they have the youth abilities and all this other stuff. And so while he's there recouping from his leg, they're like, hey, do you want to try some of our water treatment? And he's like, okay, let's do this. But apparently there's some shit in the water that makes you hallucinate and it might be poisoning. And I think it's dehydrating everybody. Go to part 3. This is part 3 for an unhinged review of A Cure for Wellness. By now you're probably thinking, crust parking lot candy, you're giving us too much information and none of this makes sense. Well, I'm giving you the ultimate movie experience because it plays out exactly like that. Let us proceed. So here's where it starts to lose me, because this is in fact the Pirates of the Caribbean director who spent many, many, many months and probably years on boats on top of water. You would think he knows what drowning looks like accurately. So they start this guy in a sensory deprivation tank, even though he's in a leg cast, with the lid closed and all that fun stuff. And he's got a heart monitor on, and there's only this porthole where the doctor who's monitoring him can watch him, and they can monitor his heart on the little machine. Well, the doctor was too busy diddling his doodle, literally, to see that the guy freaked out because there were all these eels in the sensory deprivation tank. And first off, it's not covering his nose. So if he gets scared, they are very lucky if he doesn't try to breathe in through his nose. Besides that, so he tries to swim to the top and push the lid off, but it doesn't come off. And then you see his respirator fall out, and then after a while he breathes in and he sinks to the bottom and he starts drowning. Well, cut to them just pulling him out, and all he's doing is coughing out water. How long was he under there? Between breathing in the water, sinking all the way to the bottom, because this is a big-ass tank, then discovering that he's in the bottom, pulling him up, and then rescuing him, there is no way he was not dead. I legitimately thought they Eddard Starked him and just killed him off there at sort of the beginning. But no, apparently not. And then he meets Mia Goth, who's supposedly the special patient, but come to find out And then he meets Mia Goth, who's supposedly a special patient who can't touch the water and stuff. But come to find out, she is the daughter of the doctor who he is planning on marrying and consummating with. He doesn't know that yet, but the reason they're doing that is because she looks like the Baroness. And I think he might be the Baron because he's missing a face and he wears fake faces, but underneath he looks like the Green Goblin. And from what I can gather in my thoughts is that they were drinking this little vial of stuff that he comments tastes like sweat and seafood to stay young forever, but I can't quite figure that part out. Nor can I figure out the part why he looks like the Green Goblin. But anyways, the guy goes to look for his boss, and he ends up in all of these restricted areas where, come to find out, they're apparently doing weird experimentations on people, including his boss. I don't exactly know what the experimentation is supposed to do. But then the doctor daddy finds out that the guy's been snooping this whole time and decides that his treatment needs to be, I guess, progressed. Go to part 4. This is a part 4 review of The Cure for Wellness. Guys, I'm hoping this is the last part. This is just a lot to fucking unpack. Just to let y'all know, I kind of skipped over the stuff that's really not important, that leads nowhere, but there is this scene where Mia Goth finds an open MAC lipstick on a counter in a bathroom at a bar, and all I can think of is, yep, whoever wrote this definitely doesn't wear makeup, because who the fuck leaves a MAC lipstick just out in the open for anyone to take? But that's unimportant. But now we're getting into the big gross stuff, and I left all the movie stills out of this because I don't know if I can get the band hammer for them. So as was stated previously, there's something weird in the water that makes you hallucinate, and the main guy has been drinking the water this whole time. Even though he thinks something weird is going on, he continuously drinks the water for reasons unknown. Anyway, he's having all these hallucinations that eels live in the toilet. And then he rips out the whole toilet. Not really needed because that doesn't go anywhere, but I'm just letting you know on that one. And then his tooth comes out, like his whole tooth. Which apparently is a pretty common occurrence at the retreat, is that people lose teeth all the time. And so he distracts the night nurse with his freshly fallen out tooth so that he can go down into the restricted areas. But then Daddy Doctor finds him and he's like, oh, well, we have a dentist on staff. And then some scary dental devices come out and some more stuff happens. Needless to say, he loses another tooth. Unwillingly and unnaturally. Well, he gets away and tries to go to the police, but the police calls the sanatorium, and then they gaslight him into thinking he was supposed to still be there, a la Shutter Island, which is why I bring that up. And then we find out why that little vial of shit that we don't know what it does tastes like sweat and seafood. And let's hope I don't get banned for showing this little still. There's a pipe and a mouth guard and a jar full of those weird eels that we have seen throughout the whole movie. Basically, he's put into this thing that looks like an iron lung that makes you sweat, and then they're filled with eels. And for whatever reason, between the eels being inside of you and you sweating turns into this magic elixir or whatever. And then I think they use it to stay young forever. Basically, they use it on the guests the whole time until the guests turn into like these human mummies, and then they feed them to these eels in this giant pool in the basement. And then being forced pumped eels kind of subdues him. But anyways. Mia Goth gets her period, and then the Dr. Daddy's like, oh boy, I can marry you now and procreate with you. So then they have like this weird seance thing in the dungeon/basement where there's the pool of eels. And he's like, yeah, let's go in this room. And then it looks like a bedroom for Phantom of the Opera. And then there's an explicit scene of him trying to, and then you find out his face falls off. But the main guy goes to rescue Mia Goth, and she whacks him with an axe, and he falls in the pool.